Welcome to the Women in Wellness podcast,
where we believe that the world can be changed one woman at a time.
Your journey to becoming more present, healthy, and joyous starts right now.
Hello, Women in Wellness. It's Dr. Caitlin with Dr. Sonya, and we wanted to take a minute to talk to you guys about how we prepare every year for the upcoming year and how we reflect and shed the year that is passing, because we truly believe that this is extremely important this year, especially, shedding the past, opening ourselves up for the future, and really setting ourselves up for success. So, Dr. Sonya, what are some things that you do to, prepare for the new year, coming up?
The new shift. Yeah, I love this time of year because I think there's such a global energy that moves and there's so much momentum towards something new and change, and that feeling of letting go. And, winter is a time that reflects death, and not in a bad way, but just that letting go and shedding like you were speaking to. And especially this year, I've done a lot of reflecting on that and how we can best serve ourselves by moving into 2021 with intention, not with high expectation, but with intention. I think there's a difference there too. So I've been very conscious of that in my thoughts about 2021, because I think many of us are like, okay, great, 2020 is going to be over and it's going to be great. 2021 is just going to fix everything. And then it may not, right? So I was going to
say, I like that because just because we plan, because you and I are very much a planner, we like to take control. Mm-hmm. We had a conversation about how maybe I should release and relinquish some control to my husband. And my response was, oh, that's super cute. Are you doing that with, Dr.
With my partner? Well? I know, it's so hard.
But there is a lot of truth to that. And releasing control on the things that we have no control over really does allow a whole lot of growth and a whole lot of calmness within us when we can do that. And it takes some time and some practice. But what are some things, especially with this past year, 2020 was supposed to be the year of vision. And I do believe that it still was the year of vision. It gave a whole lot of us maybe visions of how we want to do things in the future, or how we want to respond, or what we want to do differently. I know it sure did that for me and my husband. But what are some things that you're going to do to shed 2020 and be open for 2021?
Yeah, so I love rituals, and the winter solstice is coming up. And so I like to do fires. I plan to write out anything that shows up for me around 2020 and things that I want to release and let go of. And I want to give it to the fire so it can transform into new energy for 2021. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to do personally for myself. And with our family, we like to talk about, the wins that we've had, the losses that we've had, and how we can shift things, what we can focus on for the next year. So collectively as a family, we have like these family goals. We've actually even made like a family logo, because we've started having family meetings every Sunday. And so we're just going to keep doing that with the kids to get them into a practice of also reflecting and then creating intention. What about you? What are you going to be doing?
Yeah, I actually like to do two things. One, I will do a meditation to just clear my mind, clear my heart, to figure out, okay, what is it that is, weighing me down, or what is it that I need to release, or what is it that I'm grateful for? And then I journal about it. And I just write. It's not in any particular order. It could be like intermashed, like, I regret this, or this made me sad, or this made me angry, or I'm very grateful for this, or whatever it may be. And then I don't normally burn it, but that might be a new one, like writing out all of the things that I want to release and burning them, just to release that energy and let it transform into something hopefully more productive. So those are what I do to essentially figure out what happened this past year, what can I let go, And then the next day I do a completely different meditation and try and figure out, okay, what is it that I want to set my intention for the coming year? And, we've talked about this in the past. Usually like a word or a phrase comes to mind that's going to be kind of like the not logo, but like the theme for the year. And there's been times where, I'm sure with you too, where I pick a word and boy, does it challenge me. But I haven't quite figured out my word for 2021 yet. How about you?
Yeah. Last 2 years, I've actually looked at more at asking questions rather than creating a word. And I found that almost took the pressure off the word. I mean, we joke about my husband, and one year he picked radical trust, and we were like, oh boy, let's see what kind of testing happens for you in order to experience that radical trust. And so I still don't know even what that question is that I want to ask, or if it's going to be a word or a phrase this year. I don't necessarily know that yet, but I do feel like it'll show up when it needs to. I'm not putting any pressure around it. Even if it shows up while I'm in 2021, I feel like it'll just kind of show up through meditation, through just, moving through every moment as best as we can. I think
life experience.
With intention of like, okay, what is it that I need? Like, how do I need to best serve the world in the way that I want to? Like, these are definitely questions that show up for me a lot, and maybe that's just it, and that's just what's going to help me move through the next couple of months.
How about we talk a little bit about how we utilize those words? Because I know a lot of people talk about picking a theme for the year, and that's really the extent to what most people understand from, picking a word or picking a sentence, or, asking yourself questions when things come up. So how do you utilize that theme for the upcoming year? How do you apply that?
Yeah, so one year my question was, how can I shine best? And so in my choices that I was making, whether it had to do with work or with my family, it was this thing that was always in the back of my mind in every moment, whether it was a difficult conversation with one of my kids, which can be really difficult sometimes. That question was always lingering of like, okay, how can you shine in this moment? Or in this project that's coming up, how can I shine in this project? So it just always was a backbone or foundation that I tried to build on. And then from that, more questions would come up and more answers would also show up. So I use it in a sense, it's like my daily intention in the morning, so that it's in my psyche throughout the year and I'm not just forgetting about it.
Yeah, I love that. That's essentially how I utilize it as well. 2 years ago, my word was amusement.
Yeah, I remember.
And so again, be prepared for the word that you pick, because the universe, God, higher force, whatever you go on, whatever term, resonates with you, is going to allow you to step into that, to work on that word. And so for me, anytime that I got irritated or frustrated or angry, that word would pop into my brain and I would ask myself, okay, what can I find amusing out of this situation or this conversation or whatever is happening? And sometimes the answer was, well, the fact that I picked the word amusement, because in that moment, I couldn't find anything amusing out of it because I was just too angry. But, a few minutes later, an hour later, even a day later, I could go back, reflect on it, and then find something that I could switch the energy from that anger, that frustration, fear, whatever it was, to more of an amusement type of energy. Because amusement is far lighter and it allows you to move through things a little quicker.
That's
so that's really how I utilize those words, just like you, is like, reflect, like, okay, how can I find amusement? How can I best shine? How can I within the situation?
Yeah, I love that. And I think another thing that's important to talk about is, like you mentioned, 2020 being the year of vision. I think all of us were moving into it going, okay, there's going to be so much clarity, there's going to be so much this, but if anything, it created more confusion But what I think it did, though, it unveiled
Mm-hmm.
or are working a individual level as well. So I do think a lot of these things last year, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about like what do you do then once you've unveiled. What you want to do is you want to be able to not distract yourself from what you see or push it away. What you want to do is actually look at what the unveiling is and what you can do with that new information. And maybe 2021 is about that, is about taking the action to create new habits, to create new stories, to release the old way of doing things and creating a space to create time to create the life that you want for yourself. So I think that can be like a really beautiful way to transition out of this vision unveiling the truth year, which I think is still happening for many of us. But just to kind of move into the energy of like, we don't have to suffer in the unveiling, but we can look at the suffering, we can see what it is for what it is, and move through it instead of around it, how we're used to doing.
I think regardless, every year we're given the opportunity to test what our beliefs are, what it is that we want, because as individuals, we really should be growing and expanding each year. And as we learn more, it does give us the opportunity to make shifts and changes in, you know, what we initially thought we wanted, or maybe what we thought we wanted to do. And so I think, you know, 2020 has really given us the opportunity to see that, you know, maybe it wasn't as we planned. There's probably a lot of things that we can all agree upon that we don't like about 2020. But I'm sure that there's a lot of really great things that have come out of it as well. And so being able, honestly, 2020 has allowed me to see more flexibility within myself. And so I love that unveiling, that like peeling the layers off and seeing what is really at the core.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. So having gratitude for that experience too, and having gratitude for the things that are working, because so much of our energy sometimes goes into looking at what didn't work, what we missed out on, like my trip to Bali for my 40th birthday. But I'm over it, maybe, that I didn't get to do. Anyways, I think there can be gratitude in so much of that. So I think moving into 2021 with that experience of gratitude in our hearts can really bring in more space for joy and be okay with uncertainty. I think that was a big lesson that many of us learned this past year.
Yeah, relinquishing some control. So if you women are a little bit like Dr. Sonya and I, you like to control situations and outcomes to best minimize the uncomfort level. And that was definitely something that I'm learning. Actually, this year, I think what I learned is I'm the only person in control of my own happiness. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But, you know, when you remind yourself that you can choose to be happy even in crummy situations, and you don't have to be happy all the time. That's definitely not what I'm implying, but understanding that even when things are out of our control, we can still find things to be grateful for. That's right. So, you know, Dr. Sonya, like when people are looking at creating new habits, you know, because the new year is always a beginning, a new beginning where we can do things differently, have a new start, because new year, new start, new you. What are some things that you found that allow people to be successful when setting New Year's resolutions, which I don't like that word. And I'll talk about that in a second, but what are some things that allow people to be successful when they're thinking about the new year, what they want out of the new year, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think looking at the bigger picture first and then reverse engineering to see how you can get to that space and then letting it go. And that's the hard part, right? So setting the intention, I think just having that daily intention and then picking the one thing that you can commit to, the one thing that you can be consistent with, or the one thing that's going to carry you over to create this new habit that then will give you permission to create more afterwards. So I think being graceful with yourself and creating these resolutions and goals is the most important thing. And then having the bigger picture in mind always, and knowing that the path to that bigger picture is jagged, it's not straight. And just to give yourself some grace, I would say that I think will create more success in our own vision. What about you?
Yeah, I always tell people that when you're trying to do something new, something that you haven't done before, or achieve something that you haven't achieved yet, working in a group or working with a mentor or having somebody who has that path for you is probably one of the biggest things that allows people to be successful, especially quicker. And it's usually because of having that accountability. For me, especially when I am accountable and I say I'm going to do something or I sign up for something, I do it because my word is my bond. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it unless something like catastrophic happens, which doesn't happen often. So for me, I always encourage people, if you're trying to do something or you want to learn something new, get with a group of people that are trying to do the same thing or wanting to do the same thing, or find somebody to teach you how to do it. Because let's talk about getting healthy, losing weight, eating well, changing your diet. Sometimes it can be really hard, especially if our family's not on board with it. And so having a group of people that we can, communicate with, talk about the frustrations and the wins really makes a huge difference.
Especially in times of today, because we're missing community so much. So connecting to other people with your goals can be so supportive and helpful.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing. And I love that you said chunk it down. So set your big goal, but then figure out how you can chunk it down so that you can be successful. You don't want to make it so easy that it's really not challenging, but at the same token, you don't also want to set something that is completely unrealistic, because what I find, and you can tell me if you've seen this as well with clients, when they set completely unrealistic goals and they know they're not going to achieve it, they just kind of give up because they're like, oh, whatever, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely, because it almost feels easier to give up instead of feel the feelings of not succeeding in something, because that's very uncomfortable. And it almost gives us permission to not be responsible for the choices that we're making too. And I think that's a big piece in it too, because when we know we're achieving something, I think as humans, through our habits and personalities and things, we sometimes sabotage what we're creating. And everyone has their own stories as to why that happens in their lives. But I think most of us are wired to almost do that. So creating success sometimes can be a challenge. And it's challenging your psyche, it's challenging your belief systems, and that can be exhausting, it can be tiring. So having a community, having a mentor, having somebody like pulling you as you're pulling yourself through all of those beliefs and stuff too can be really supportive. And I think that absolutely is going to create success for sure.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I want to encourage you guys, if whatever intention, whatever vision, whatever goals you set for this coming year, give yourself grace. If you fall off the bandwagon for, a week, 2 weeks, a month, that's okay. Just get back on. Don't write off the whole year. You can start over at any time. It's not just January 1st. So I think, being graceful with yourselves and giving yourselves permission to be human and not be perfect is very important. Absolutely. As long as you have the recognition to know that you can get back on track at any time.
Yeah, it's not a race. Right? Allow yourself to have the journey, enjoy the journey, have gratitude for the journey, and you will be successful no matter what.
Perfect. Okay, so Dr. Sonya, why don't we recap this and give them like our top 3 things, whether it's for like releasing this past year or setting ourselves up for success for the year coming.
Love it. So first, I would create some sort of a ritual. I would also have a family meeting, a self meeting with yourself to reflect and understand what it is that you need for growth in the coming year. And then pick either a word, a phrase, a question, a theme, a song, whatever you want for the coming year. That's going to be your anchor point for 2021.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah, my thing would be reflect on the year and figure out what it is that you can be grateful for, because being grateful has such a powerful energy. And when we can be grateful, that is going to amplify. And then look at the things that maybe, challenged us, gave us some pushback, things that we didn't like, and be okay with releasing it. So whether it's like what Dr. Sonya said, write it down and burn it, or do a meditation, I'll put it in like a little box and release it and then blow it up so that the energy can be dispersed, and reutilized for the positive. And then figure out what it is that I would like my 2021, in this sense, to look like. So what I'll do is I will look at the big goal and then chunk it out and figure out, okay, how can I do this? And this might even be like chunking it down into quarters, and then into months and then into weeks. And so the more that you can chunk it down, the more successful you're going to be. And if you don't know how to get to that end goal, find a group, find a community, find a mentor that's going to help you get to that next level, whether it's in your health, whether it's spiritually, whether it's
financially.
Whatever it may be. Find somebody that has done it and that can show you how to do it. Don't take advice from somebody who hasn't done it themselves or isn't living, what it is that you want to achieve. So ultimately, if you're looking to have a really healthy life, don't go to a doctor who is, morbidly obese, on a million medications. That doesn't make sense. Like there's no congruency there. So make sure you're being particular about who you're getting advice from.
That's right. I love that. I think these are great little tidbits to help you move through the holidays and give you time to reflect on what it is that you want, and wishing all of you an amazing 2021 transition.
Absolutely. May 2021 be magical for you guys, however you want it to look.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, enjoy the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021.
If you've been enjoying the Women in Wellness podcast, please take 2 minutes to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.
This helps more women find the podcast to get the information they have been searching for.
This way we can truly change the world one woman at a time.
Remember, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook,
where we're sharing information with women every single day.
Join us next week for another episode of Women in Wellness.
And as always, thank you for listening.